Welcome to the Pet Loss Companion. I'm Ken Dolan-Del Vecchio, and I'm here with my friend and colleague and co-author, Nancy Saxton-Lopez. This is a broadcast that we do once a week, every Thursday live, and it is then available on a variety of media outlets. And so we do this because we want to bring the learning that we packaged in our book, The Pet Loss Companion, Healing Advice from Family Therapists Who Lead Pet Loss Groups. We want to bring that information to as broad an audience as we can. And so today we're going to have a conversation that touches on where we left off last week with Nancy's very recent loss. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the history and the hypotheses about the depth of our relationship with animal companions, in particular our dogs, but it really applies to many of the species that we live closely with. And of course, we'll have a question from one of the listeners as well that we'll respond to. So Nancy, how are you doing? Tell us where things have gone since last week.
It's a hard adjustment. I think about Molly every day. Of course, I also think about Rosie, and I think about Hank, and all the other ones. We had our funeral or our viewing on Tuesday. We went to, I talked about in Abbey Glen, which is up in Sussex County in northern New Jersey. We've gone there 7 times now, which is kind of rough. Well, actually 8, because I went with my brother-in-law's dog at one point. But it was very, very nice, very peaceful. I think, Ken, I sent you a picture.
You did, and if you feel up to it, maybe put that picture on the Facebook page.
Oh, okay, that's a good idea. Actually,
it was a beautiful picture and very, very peaceful.
Very peaceful, and they allow you to your loved one is laid out and has got a nice little blanket and a little pillow. And I brought lilacs from her garden.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we spent some time, and then we were able to watch her body go into the crematory. They're very, very nice there. They say, it's not on. You'll just see, her body go in. And then, we got her ashes, and that was really important for us. So it's a day-to-day thing. We reminisce about how she was and what we miss. Her daddy, Jack, here is very upset. He cries a lot. He's Ellie, the little Frenchie, never was involved with the pugs too much. They didn't really have too much to do with her, but Jack's a little upset. So, I mean, we're getting through. It's something that you work with every day.
Yeah.
And the funny.
Did you get a teapot yet?
Oh, I did. And the interesting thing about this was, this was perfect for her. Her nickname was Kitten Tongue, because her face was like a little cat, right? So I got a black cat teapot. So she will be in her black teapot, her cat teapot. So I was really happy with that find. So
that's nice.
She could be kitten.
And you said before we started, I don't know if you just said this, that she's now home.
She's home. We wanted her home. And so now we're thinking we have to get shelving because the piano top is not big enough for all of our teapots. But it's okay. It's, we love them. They're home, and that's where they belong. So.
Yeah.
But that, you and I were talking ahead of time, and there was a question that came through, and it has to do with guilt. There was a person who said, I know I could have done something more. I missed something. He should not have died, and I can't live with myself. And so we go back to the guilt, right? And guilt can take many different forms. For me, I wasn't there when Molly died. And I couldn't be with her at her last moment. I know I couldn't have. She died. But that to me still was upsetting. And that's one form guilt takes. But for this person, we always do have a feeling of guilt after the fact, right? Maybe should have taken them to the vet. Maybe I didn't pay enough attention to symptoms. Maybe I left the house. I shouldn't have left the house. And so it's such a hard thing.
It's so hard, and this feeling of I can't live with it. It's just a story that is part of so many people's experiences. It's just hurt. I mean, it viscerally hurts, right? It hurts in your gut. And all you can do is put it out there the way this person did, and keep going, and try at least some of the time to focus your energy and your thoughts elsewhere. Not all the time, because you don't want to deny that you're feeling whatever guilt or upset of whatever sort, but you got to just keep going. You got to just keep going. And so hard. Guilt is so common. It's just such a common.
It's common, and I think it's probably the hardest emotion around grieving, because especially with euthanasia decisions, people don't want to think that they're God and take their animal's life. Either they say I did it too soon, or I waited too long. There's a lot of agony almost with the guilt that people have.
That's terrible.
But it does take multiple types of guilt, even from, I shouldn't have gone on vacation, or.
Well, that's one that I've had, as I mentioned. Yeah. We're going to be going for just a few days to visit friends in Pennsylvania. We live in Massachusetts, as you know, and we're going to have a really wonderful pet care giver here just for a long weekend, but it always makes me anxious.
I know.
We know that our dogs are okay. They're stable right now. They're both doing very well. One is perfectly healthy, and the other one is very stable in her condition with her congestive heart failure. But we don't do a lot of traveling with them.
A lot of us don't with animals, or we split, like my husband and I split vacations, because we just are very cautious and careful and about who's around our animals. And that's understandable. I mean, we've had people come to the group, right? And they say, I haven't gone on a vacation for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. Or unless I go, but I need to take them with me.
Yeah. It's a hard balance. It's definitely a hard balance. So we'll keep checking in with you, and we'll keep responding to people's questions, because we want the content to be as helpful as it can be for people. And we know there isn't a lot of space for people to talk about grief in general, and certainly the loss of a beloved pet. But we'll move ahead now, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about something that you and I were talking about not too long ago, and that is just how powerful the connection with our animals historically has been, and in particular with dogs. And I told you, I think sometime last week, I said, I read this research that says that dogs actually help to shape human culture, that we co-evolved with the quote unquote wolf dogs who we modern human beings began to watch and partner with. And I was looking at a variety of different articles, and they were describing things like there's a sense that we modern human beings might have outcompeted the Neanderthals, because 45,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens was coming into Europe, they were practicing this partnership where they had learned that if they tagged along when wolves were coursing large game, if they followed along when the game got exhausted, they could then kill it with their spears. And this was something that worked incredibly well, because the wolves have to kill close up, and it's dangerous. and yet they can run for a very long distance. And human beings can kill with a little bit of a distance if they have the skill to throw a spear. And so there's research that says that this is an important hypothesis, and that the collaboration was even one that went on over very, very long time. And it's now evident in the digestive tracts of human beings and dogs. So that human beings, as you know, are omnivores. We eat everything, right? And dogs are more omnivores than wolves are today. So wolves need mostly whatever they eat from their prey, and they have a much higher protein requirement than dogs do. Dogs have a more of an ability to eat all kinds of different things, and their digestive tract is more varied, like ours. It's not the very short digestive tract of a pure carnivore. So I think it's very, very interesting. And also I've read theorists who say that we paid attention to wolf pack behavior. So the fact that all the wolves care for the young, the females that are not bred that season care for the young, that there's a division of labor. And it's very interesting stuff, because it takes human beings in a way out of the center, like always the height of power, the only brain in the partnership, and puts us in a place that's probably more realistic when you think about the natural world and the way the natural world functioned a long, long time ago. I just find it really fascinating. And also this research puts the partnership between human beings and dogs, or wolf dogs or wolves, very early on, much earlier than, I think that generally the research is set around 16,000 or 20,000. This research is saying more like 45,000 years ago. So a very, very long time. Human beings have been in our present form for about 200,000 years. So we're not that old when it comes to the record of species, you know?
Right.
It's interesting to see that for a huge chunk of that time, we may have been co-evolving. I just find that really fascinating. And I also think that it accounts for the depth of connection.
Oh, you know? Yes. That's exactly right. And that goes into the human-animal bond.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of research about that this week. I know about it, obviously. I've been dealing with it, but I wanted to make sure I had some succinct information. I'm going to read the definition, because I think I can't do any better than this definition. The human-animal bond is a mutually beneficial and dynamic relationship between people and animals that is influenced by behaviors that are essential to the health and well-being of both. That's the wolves, the people, right? The emotional, psychological, and physical connections people have with animals and the environment are also incorporated into the definition of the human-animal bond. Animals were so essential to the daily lives of early humans that there is evidence we may not have survived without them.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So that's interesting, right? Now, the concept was started to be articulated by Lorenz and Levinson in the 60s. And so they started to do some articles. But the bond, as you talked, right, 45,000, the human-animal bond has evolved for more than, 45,000 years, whatever that's.
Dogs, yeah.
And began with working relationships. Now, people couldn't do anything without animals in farming, or hunting, or other tasks. I mean, all of the animals the horses and oxen that pulled carriages, or farming equipment. The dogs that were around for hunting. And so these were tasks that were necessary for day-to-day life, and animals served in wartime. World War I believe. I mean, there was But what happened in New York City in around 1866 was that there was people noticed that the animals were being beat and abused. So if a horse was all of a sudden collapsing because that horse has been, carrying people in a carriage all day, then the owner would get off and just beat them. They also, had cockfighting back then, dog fighting back
Oh,
then.
still do, right? I mean, still
Yes,
do. It's
unfortunately.
illegal, but they do it. Yeah.
And so, or they would take pet dogs and hold them for ransom to get money. I mean, it was really kind of crazy. So their laws started to be put into place in New York City around that time. And Henry Berg, his name was, who was kind of a diplomat, founded the American Society of Prevention of Cruelty of Animals, the SPCA.
Okay.
And his tomb is in Brooklyn. It's a mausoleum, and it has a sculpture of animals in front of it, which I thought was, I looked it up today. I'd never seen it. I was like, wow, there's a whole sculpture of animals around. And that was founded in 1866. But since then, and by the way, after that, after the laws went through for, the protection of animals, later on came child protective laws. So they were the template. The animal laws were the template for children.
Yeah.
Which I think is really, really interesting.
It is, the work that I've done and some of the writing I've done as a therapist has as its foundation the notion of power and the idea that the least powerful people in the world are children, and in fact children of color in particular, and children in families that are in poverty, and it just goes to show you in a way that there was so little we have had so little consideration for children that we were even protecting animals before them. That's really interesting history. Really interesting history. It's surprising, but it's not surprising at the same time.
Right. And I thought that when I read that too some time ago, I was like, wow, that's interesting that they actually had laws protecting animals, but they had not for children until after those were passed for animals. But the American Humane Society was founded in 1877. The Latham Society, which was a clearinghouse for information on the human-animal bond, in 1918, and the Humane Society of the United States in 1954. So it's been since these 1860s that there has been continual work on the human-animal bond, protection of animals. The Delta Society, which is now Pet Partners, was founded in 1977 by William McCullough, who was a vet, Leo Bustad, who was a vet, and Michael McCullough, who's the brother to William, who was a psychiatrist. And they got involved. That was the first really human-animal bond research. And they were a clearinghouse for animal-assisted interventions and whatever else animals could benefit people, people could benefit animals. And the first books, Nyberg's book, Nyberg and Fisher, was written in 1983. So it's really pretty current. Some of this work has been done.
Well, you think about how people have been experimenting on animals for a very long time. And in fact, there have been the history of experimentation on animals and testing is horrific, actually.
Oh yeah, well, all the cosmetic industry was
cosmetic industry, medical industry. I mean, the things that have been tried out, quotation marks, tried out on animals historically, often without appropriate anesthesia. So to think that we're evolving toward a greater respect, and I mean it's essential for us to evolve towards greater respect toward all of nature, because we're destroying it rapidly, and it's So for people who love and are connected to animals, I always have said that it's so important for us, for our children, to have relationships with animals, for us to have pets in our children's lives if we're parents. I just feel like it's a fundamentally nurturing part of family life.
Oh, of course.
And I there's such an important connection to all of nature, really.
Yes.
And I just feel like that's something that can't be overstated. And we know that the connection we have with animals has measurable health benefits, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
reduces
Absolutely.
stress, it lowers, when we pet a dog, our heart rate tends to decrease, our blood
That's
pressure
right.
tends,
Cholesterol actually goes down, that was amazing to me, but that's what they say.
cortisol goes down.
Yeah, right. Right. And I
So,
think people who have animals have a 15% benefit over those that don't for cardiac issues.
wow.
So I just read that Bayer put that out. But for humans, the benefits are stress reduction, increased healing and independence, improved mood, more physical activity, an immunity boost, social connections, emotional support, and better health. I mean, but for them, they get food, exercise, play, food, and love.
They get love. We all need love.
But you cannot have a relationship with a human like you can with an animal. It just doesn't, it's different.
It's different. It's so direct and uncomplicated. I told you that today I was at a llama farm.
Ooh,
My husband went to a llama farm, and I got to interact with some of the llama, because I'm thinking of bringing them into my family, and it's just beautiful animals.
they are. I've seen llamas. I love
Just
llamas.
beautiful animals, and very interesting. Like they always want to sniff you. They're sniffing at your face, and I feel like every time I get to interact with new animals, I just learn so much more about nature, and really about myself, like what that means to me and how I feel in the presence of other earthlings. And
Well, they're so simple, and they're innocent, and they're loving, and it's all unconditional.
yeah,
They don't hold grudges. They don't care what you look like. They don't
yeah,
have an issue with any status. They just want to be with you.
yeah. Well, I don't know. She hasn't been so intrusive this time, but
As me.
Esme has been often on my lap. I've been like trying to push her. She just ran outside. She comes in and out of her flap, and it's just great to have her here. My new office is actually her
Her
bedtime
domain.
space as well, and her domain too. And she's been great. She's been sleeping in here, and not tearing at furniture, so that's really good.
Well, that's
But all of this, when we talk, I mean, obviously it makes us smile, it makes us happy when we talk,
of course,
and
because
then
it's so
but when we lose that, I mean, that's just the other side. That's the other
that's
side. It just
devastating.
it just illustrates the reality that grief is the cost of having loved. I mean, it really does come down to that. And as much as we had the love and the mutual love of our animal friends, there's a huge hole in our lives when they leave, when they die.
Yeah.
And
Also, it's interesting because I talked to a woman this week who her dog has not died yet, but is very ill. And she couldn't deal. We had talked about this in another episode, the anticipatory grieving. She
yeah,
could
yeah,
not deal with what was happening to her, because every time she got up, every time she looked, every time she touched and pet and fed her dog, she was like, when is this going to happen?
yeah.
And it was
Right.
it was more excruciating. And she even said, this pain, even though she hasn't died yet, is worse than pain that I've had for losing of humans in my life.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, also at that stage, oftentimes you're doing all sorts of very intimate care,
Yes.
giving medications, measuring medications, cutting up pills, giving injections, weighing them, moving them, cleaning them up in ways that you didn't have to in earlier years often. And so this kind of intimacy is extraordinary. But also, there's no pain really like uncertainty, right? I mean,
Right.
it's
I mean,
one of
that's
the,
her anxiety was through the
yeah,
roof. I
yeah,
mean,
the
she
uncertainty of when's it going to happen?
is it going
What's
to
it going to be
happen?
like?
Yeah.
Is she going to be in a lot of distress? When should I be talking to my other family members, friends who I love and respect to figure out if it's time to ease her suffering through euthanasia? Am I talking with the vet about that? What's the vet saying? Do I agree? I mean, all of that, but all of that uncertainty is so painful. And I can just
Palpable.
imagine, yeah, it's and I can just imagine also this, as you were describing, she's taking care of her dog who's at the end of I think you said it's a dog who's at the end of
Yeah.
their life, that it's almost like the vision that came to me is this dead friend walking, like your friend is going to be dead soon, and it's just so
It's,
heart-wracking.
yes, it's painful.
Yeah.
It's painful. And so I did give her the quality of life scale. I did refer her to a veterinarian who comes to the home. If that's
Good.
the case,
Good.
that, euthanasia. But we'll talk again, but she had to let go of all this angst, and she loves this dog so much, but that the dog has limited time, but she doesn't know when.
I wonder if she has respite as well, like if at least for part of every day or every other day she can be apart from the stress
Right.
for an hour or so. If there's some way that she does that, because the chronic stress, and a lot of times, I don't know if she's working from home.
No, she's more of an older lady, I believe. I mean,
In her retirement years.
yeah, she's in retirement. But I have another client whose cat is in the same situation, and so I could when if I see them, if I do FaceTime, or if I just hear their voices, I know that it's just it's almost palpable, and they can't tolerate the anxiety. But so they do need some space away. We had talked about that before. I do think for some people, though, that they're scared to death to even leave them.
Yeah. That's such a catch. That's such a dilemma, right? That's such a dilemma.
And what happens if I leave and he dies?
And oftentimes that's when it will happen.
Yeah.
Right. That's when it'll happen. It's so common.
I had a young woman that I worked with for a while. I think she came to the group, and she had been waiting and waiting and waiting, and I think the dog was laying on like on the stairs. I mean, it was like, what do you call it? The stairs come down, and there's
the landing.
Yeah, thank you. And she bent down to him and said, it's okay that you go. It's okay. I love you so much, but it's okay that you can let go. And she left, and when she came back, he had died.
Yeah.
So
I have a friend right now who believes that the dog that belonged to her parents, and now her brother who has a disability is caring for. She thinks that maybe the dog is very, very sick and elderly, is hanging on for him. And that
they know, right? That he
had. I mean, that's how tightly connected we sometimes are. And so we don't want to lose each other, but
unfortunately,
we have to face the facts of nature. Right?
They just don't live long enough.
Yeah. So again, great conversation, Nancy. And any closing thoughts?
Yeah, for all of you out there that we hope are being helped by our conversations. We really would welcome, comments or questions, because we want to gear this to what you need. And
Yeah.
so if you would please, let us know if you have a topic, or you have a specific question, or you just have a comment or something of interest that you want us to address. We would be more than happy to do that.
That's great. Thanks for stating that. And yep, absolutely. Or a story, anything that you think it might be useful for us to address. Great talking with you as always, Nancy. Have a good evening. I look forward to talking with you soon.
Next week. Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.